Well, we've torn it up. Now let's put it back together. I'm going to venture into eschatology and prophecy. I have indicated previously that all this model is tentative and preliminary, because my observations and the observations of the consultants involved in this research would certainly be compromised. But the model is consistent. Now, when we get into eschatology, I'm aware that there are various individuals watching this series who may differ to one degree or another about what the future holds, even those who firmly believe the biblical record. For some, what I'm going to say, this will be interpreted as a phase-in for the eternal ages. For others, there will be an interpretation of a literal period of tribulation. For some, there will be a premillennial, for some, a postmillennial return, as there is a phase for God to restore the creation and for God in the second person of the Trinity to rule and reign. But let me approach this, no matter how you interpret this, and you certainly have that prerogative, let me approach this as if all of these increments are literal, and we will see either way, no matter how you interpret it, as literal increments, as a phase-in to the eternal ages, or as a variant millennial reign. Either way, you'll be satisfied that the Creator is going to return and rectify all that we've damaged. We call this the Tribulation Globe. A number of things are occurring. Beginning here, we have our current lines of electromagnetic energy of the earth that are loosened and disturbed. They're not pinched at all. If we are to have a time in the future when the lion and the lamb will lie down together, and the child will play on the den of the asp and the cockatrice, if we're to have a time in the future when a man will live out his full age and his family will enjoy their own vines and fig trees, then we must have a restoration of the magnetic field. At the Creation Evidences Museum, we have simulated what the world was like before the global flood, and the results have been very encouraging, as I'll show you momentarily. But in order to get those results, we had to strengthen the magnetic field at the right Hertz level. So there needs to be a mechanism in the creation model and in the biblical record to strengthen that magnetic field. That's called the translation of the saints. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. The word twinkling there is the word ripito in the Greek. That word ripito means a flashing detectable to the eye. Imagine, if you will, the saints and children of the world at the moment an Antichrist is prepared to take over, being translated away as Christ comes into the air. At this moment, His feet do not touch the globe, but He comes into the air, and the trump shall sound, the dead in Christ shall be raised first, then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. As the Redeemer, Creator, comes into the atmosphere for the translation, you have a radiant mid-spectral energy, but an energy that is consistent with His own creation, with its own vibratory cycle, so the bodies of the dead can be resurrected. And so the spirits of the living that know Him can be quickened. Thus we have a glorious enterprise. Now, we're caught away. On the earth, it's again turned over to man. The age of the Antichrist. The fullness of time, the fullness of the Gentiles be brought in. Man again, with a globe already in disturbance, is minus the restraint of the Christian community, minus the restraint of little children. Thus again, the very imagination of his heart will be evil only continually. And again, It is stated in the book of Revelation that he will attempt to actually destroy the earth. So we have an increase in the convolution of his own thought process and the maturing of the Chernobyl that was begun at the flood, expanded the globe in the days of Peleg. Now we have another activity occurring. An earthquake, such as the world has never known, violently shaking the earth. Disruptions which indicate that thermal energy and tremendous amounts of magmatic fluids and radioactive disturbance has been expunged out of the earth. Did you get that? Material that will bring blighting boils, radiation, expunged out of the earth from an earthquake that is so violent, there's never been one like it before. That does a number of things. As that earthquake occurs and tremendous volcanic activity occurs, earthquakes shaking the entire globe, more violent even than the earthquakes at the time of the flood and in the days of Peleg, when mountain ridges were thrown upon themselves and mountains were elevated. Now we have an occurrence, the shaking of the globe, the heating of the waters. So we have had a strengthening of this electromagnetic field. As these waters are heated and these radioactive materials are giving off their violent radiation, you have a canopy taking place again. You have the electromagnetic field strengthened. Now you have the waters forming into a canopy. Now, but those waters need to be purged. In prophecy, there's an account that there will be a time in the future when hailstones will fall globally out of the skies, hailstones the weight of a talent, approximately 100 pounds. In order to get hailstones of any size, you need strong electromagnetic energy. You need nuclei of dust particles. We've had the nuclei provided by the earthquake and volcanic eruptions. We have now the tremendous amount of electromagnetic energy. So it purges itself with these tremendous hailstones. That means that once this is all precipitated out, the dust particles are gone. The radioactive atmospheric particles are now brought back and assimilated into the waters of the earth, some on the land of the earth as well. You find many of those waters turned to blood. You find at least half the population of the globe destroyed. That certainly is accountable. Watch this. As these hot waters evaporate and recondense into a canopy, it is not now a firmament, but it's a canopy, and they're purged and cleansed, something is happening on the earth. The earth has been shaken out of its place. Many of the magmatic materials have been expunged so that you now have gaps inside the internal structure of the earth, which means that the earth, to some degree, will shrink. How do we know that's the case? Because the biblical record says that during that time, every island will flee away. In order for that to occur in a physical dimension, after you've actually lowered the water table of the earth and the surface of the earth by evaporating some waters, in order for the islands to flee away, they have to simply be submerged in water. That means you again will have a collapse of the globe to some degree. I recently heard that some geophysicists are saying that the continents of the earth are already beginning to collapse. That means that once you get a globe that shrinks in diameter, you pull back the atmospheric gases, you double the atmospheric pressure. You have, in the latter part of this tribulation period, double the atmospheric pressure, filter the ultraviolet radiation, strengthen the magnetic field. No wonder individuals being blighted by the contamination of these expunged materials. No wonder these individuals will cry to die, and many of them cannot die because you have more imbibing of oxygen, fewer free radicals, stronger electromagnetic field, living systems now will have a greater degree of the original design for their support, which brings us to the Millennial Globe. Some theologians see this as a phase into the eternal states. Others see it as a literal 1,000-year millennial reign. Either way, with the return of Christ and the saints in glory, their energy coming through this area just above the earth with the strengthened magnetic field, with the pure water or purified water in place. Remember, consistent with the creation model. On day number 1 of creation, the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters and got everything in place. On day number 2, God said, "Let there be a firmament." It simply took His energy in addition to what was in place to produce the firmament. Consistent with that is this creation and symphony model, where the return of Christ and the saints in resplendent glory, that energy, as we come through the atmosphere, holds the potential to crystallize that water and make it a firmament again. Therefore, in this millennial scene, we have dinosaurs flourishing again. We have the lion and the lamb lying together. We have the Lamb of Calvary, expressed as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, ruling and reigning over all the earth, even in its sinful context. We have the continents fitting back together again, so that an highway can lead to Jerusalem from anywhere on the planet. We have the interconnection of the continental structure again, and that's the 35th chapter of the book of Isaiah. We have a child playing on the den of the asp and the cockatrice. Now, is that possible? What is an asp or a cockatrice? Those are very poisonous, toxic snakes. At the Creation Evidences Museum, we have simulated this context in the world's first hyperbaric biosphere. We've doubled the atmospheric pressure. We've increased the electromagnetic field. We've dominated with a pink glow of light. We have filtered out ultraviolet radiation. We've increased the carbon dioxide and increased the level of oxygen. What have the results been? 3 in particular. We have doubled the growth rate of fish in a prescribed period of time. That means cellular preservation and cellular mitosis. Now that's incredible. This has applications in the space program, applications in biological medical research. We have doubled the growth rate of fish. That means we preserve the cells they have, yet they have had mitosis and maturing of other cells. If we could preserve our cells or decrease the rate at which we're losing them, our lives would be entirely different. Secondly, with fruit flies, Drosophila melanogaster, standard fruit flies, we have actually extended their lifespan beyond that which the universities have accomplished in 3,000 successive generations of study. We've increased the lifespan of the fruit fly. Most dramatically, we have copperhead snakes in the biosphere, Echidrodon contortrix. We have actually altered their venom at the molecular level just by having them in the biosphere. An independent lab in Dallas was very excited when they used a scanning electron microscope, analyzed the venom, asked me to come to the lab and see the results. The standard snake venom is spaghetti-like in orientation, gnarled. Some of you in microbiological research will recognize that it's sulfide bondings primarily that cause this long, complicated chain of proteins, being the most complicated protein structure in all of biological nature, to bond artificially, sulfide bondings. Apparently, we have neutralized or eliminated those artificial toxic sulfide bondings so that the structure is actually three-dimensional, organized like a honeycomb. We have actually altered snake venom at the molecular level just by putting it there. There are cancer research institutes in California and Oklahoma using snake venom with a remarkable rate for cancer cure. I'm not suggesting we know what's going on, but those institutions simply strain the snake venom. I think we have a better way of actually altering the molecular structure and neutralizing the sulfide bondings. Therefore, during this millennial time, the child can play on the den of the asp and the cockatrice without the toxicity that he would experience today. Finally, whether this is a phase in to the eternal age, or whether after the millennium we have a judgment of God and then a remaking of the entire creation, either way, it comes to the final disposition consistent with the design of the Creator and consistent with the creation and symphony model that we've discussed together. In Hosea, it's stated that when He remakes everything new, God will hear the heavens will hear and monitor the earth will monitor the heavens, the earth will monitor the corn, the oil, and the wine. And Peter said, at that time, when God remakes the heavens, reorchestrates everything, righteousness will dwell in the heavens. That's an awesome statement. That means that again, that which would benefit man would be at His disposal. That means the entire creation will be orchestrated. In Isaiah chapter 35, it is stated that songs and everlasting joy will come in upon the heads of the inhabitants of the earth. That's consistent with the tenets of this creation model, that when the canopy is in place and the crystalline firmament is reenacted, you can again hear some of the melodies of heaven, or at least feel them subliminally. Pythagoras stated that he could hear those celestial sounds. His students said they could not hear them but could feel them. We've lost more of the electromagnetic energy at this day. I doubt if we could do other except by special monitors such as have been done by NASA. But now we have an eternity envisioned when the physical descendants of Abraham will enjoy the earth with all its paradisal beauty. The spiritual seed of Abraham will enjoy the celestial city orbiting over the earth. We all will enjoy a perfectly balanced and orchestrated creation, harmonically attuned, all consistent with and a restoration of the original design and purpose of our Creator. I trust that our examination of creation and symphony, the model, has been an encouragement for you to see that properly interpreted science and biblical revelation are consistent with each other. I trust that you have seen that consistent with what we find in the cosmos and in our personal experience, there is one God and only one. I trust you have seen that the data explored lead us to recognize that the basis for this restoration was that the Creator manifested Himself and sacrificed Himself, not as other religions suggest in a murderous, sensual experience, but He uniquely sacrificed Himself for the benefit of all the creation, and especially man, made in His image. In Colossians chapter 1, all things were made by Him, Christ, the materialization of the Creator. All things were made by Him. By Him all things consist. That means that they're held together by Him. Physicists are at a loss to explain why the electron doesn't collapse in on the nucleus. Well, Scripture states that all things consist by Him, are held together by Him. His energy holds them together. And then all things will be restored by Him. There is hope because the Creator is who He is.
This video set has a companion series, Creation and Symphony, The Evidence.